Chapter 1, Smoke and Steel. The city pulsed like a living thing. Steel bones, glass skin, and a heartbeat made of taxi horns and subway brakes. Becky Monroe stood in the middle of it all, hunched over the sizzling griddle of her food cart, Becky's Bites, which was parked on 42nd in Lexington. The scent of caramelized onions and seasoned lamb mingled with the chill of the late November air. She wasn't just cooking, she was surviving. With a flick of her wrist, she plated a gyro for the man in line. "Next," she called, not looking up. But the next man didn't answer right away. Instead, a deep, measured voice replied, "This is interesting." Becky looked up and nearly dropped her spatula. The man wore a charcoal coat that probably cost more than her entire cart. His shoes gleamed. His eyes, gray like rain-washed concrete, studied the menu with an odd intensity, like it was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "You lost?" Becky asked, arching an eyebrow. "I was curious. Your cart has 300 five-star reviews online." "You stalk food carts for fun?" He smiled. "Only the exceptional ones." "Then you're in the wrong place," she muttered, turning back to the grill. "What'll it be?" he pointed. "One of everything." She blinked. "That'll be $72. He handed her a black card. Becky scoffed. "Cash or Venmo?" A moment later, he left with a bag full of steaming food and a lingering smirk. He didn't give a name. Becky didn't ask. But the next day, he returned. Chapter 2, Second Helpings. The next evening, Becky was restocking her tiny cooler with soda cans when she sensed it. The change in air, the subtle hush that sometimes preceded a storm, or a billionaire. He stood a few feet away. No security, no entourage, just a tailored coat and the same watchful expression. "You again?" she asked, not bothering to hide her surprise. "You didn't ask my name yesterday," he said, stepping forward. "Didn't think you were staying long." "I'm John." She blinked. "John? Just John?" He grinned. "Do you tell your customers your last name?" "No, but I also don't wear $600 scarves to street food carts." He laughed, and the sound startled her, rich and unexpected, like an expensive wine being uncorked. "Touché. May I eat here today?" "You may if you tell me what you do with all that food. No one eats 5 gyros alone." He hesitated, just briefly. "I share." She narrowed her eyes. "With who?" "A man shouldn't give away all his secrets on the second date." Becky's laugh came before she could stop it. She hated that. He was charming, and she had a thing for lost-looking rich guys with sad eyes. That was dangerous. But she still handed him a fresh lamb wrap. "You're different from the others," he said, watching her work. "The others?" "The people in this city. Most are rushing, trying to impress. You seem like you already know who you are." She paused, her hand tightening on the sauce bottle. "Yeah, well, when you grow up with 3 brothers in a 2-bedroom in Queens, you figure that out fast." His gaze softened. "I grew up in a penthouse. Still figuring it out." She looked up at him then, for real this time. And for a moment the noise of the city faded. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was something else. Broken in places. And Becky had always been good at fixing broken things. Chapter 3, Shadows in the Glass. The third night, Becky wasn't surprised when she saw him. John stood across the street, staring up at a skyscraper with all its lights on. Langston Tower, she realized, one of the tallest and most expensive buildings in the city. He didn't cross right away. He just stood there, back to the wind, face tilted up as if watching something only he could see. Becky wiped her hands on a towel and stepped out from behind the cart. "You okay?" He turned slowly. "Depends who you ask." She crossed her arms, waiting. "That building," he said, nodding toward the glass monolith. "I own it, or my family does." She followed his gaze. "Impressive. You want a medal or a hot dog?" He almost smiled. "Neither. I just realized I don't know a single person in it. Hundreds of people work there, live there, move through it every day. And I don't know a single name." Becky was quiet. The wind nipped at her coat. "You know what my father used to say?" he continued. "Ownership without purpose is just expensive emptiness." He said that while building empires. Then he left them behind. "Sounds like a real peach." John laughed bitterly. "He was a shark. Taught me how to close a deal before I could drive." "Is that why you come here? Slumming it with a food cart girl? Because it feels real?" "I come here," he said, his voice low, "because you don't ask me to be someone I'm not." She hesitated. That was dangerously close to intimacy. "You hungry?" she asked, deflecting. "Starving." That night, John didn't take the food and leave. He sat on a nearby bench. Becky pulled up a milk crate. They ate in silence, surrounded by the hum of the city. Somewhere, a saxophone played a slow, aching tune. When he finally left, Becky watched him go, her chest tight. This wasn't just a passing flirtation anymore. And she knew all too well. Falling for someone like him was like falling for fire. Beautiful, dangerous, and likely to leave a scar. Chapter 4: The Taste of Risk. The next few nights blurred into a rhythm, Becky grilling gyros under neon skies, John showing up like a recurring dream. They never talked about them, not directly, but something unspoken simmered beneath every shared meal, every stolen glance. Until Friday. That night, he didn't come alone. A sleek black SUV pulled up beside the cart, and a sharply dressed woman stepped out first. Hair like raven silk, heels sharp enough to kill. John followed her, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Bex," he said, voice careful. "This is Celine." The woman extended a gloved hand, John's business partner and oldest friend. Becky didn't take the hand, her stomach twisted. "Nice cart," Celine said, giving it a once-over like she was inspecting a museum exhibit. "Quaint." Becky gave a tight smile. "Thanks, it's paid for." Celine raised an eyebrow. "And yet he comes here every night. Fascinating." John shot Becky an apologetic look. "Celine, I'm just saying," Celine interrupted, turning to him. "You've got investors wondering if you're losing focus. We're negotiating 3 major acquisitions and you're out here eating street meat." Becky stiffened. "I'm not a distraction," she said flatly. Celine's smile was venom sweet. "No, dear. You're an escape. There's a difference." John's jaw tightened. "Enough." Becky wiped her hands on a rag, suddenly cold. "You should go, John. You've got business." He hesitated. "Becky, go." The SUV door slammed behind him, and for the first time since he'd wandered into her world, Becky felt something she hadn't expected. Alone. Chapter 5: Storm Season. The city was soaked in rain the next night, the kind that blurred headlights and turned sidewalks into rivers. Becky kept the cart closed, huddled inside her tiny apartment, the silence loud in every room. She didn't expect him to show, but he did. A sharp knock rattled her door. She opened it to find John standing there, drenched and out of breath, as if he'd run through the entire city to get to her. "You're soaked," she said, stunned. "I deserve worse," he replied. Becky stepped aside. He dripped a puddle onto her worn-out rug. "You really think I'm just an escape?" she asked softly, not turning to face him. "No," he said, "but I let her say it. I didn't defend you." The words hung between them. "I've worked for everything I have," Becky whispered. "The cart, the recipes, my name. I didn't climb a ladder, I built it." John stepped closer, voice trembling. "And I've been balancing on someone else's ladder my whole life, terrified to fall. Then you showed up, and I finally wanted to fall." She looked up at him. "You don't get to say things like that unless you mean them." "I do," he said, his gray eyes stormy and raw. "Becky, I don't care about the towers, the meetings, the money. I care about what's real. And you are." Silence. And then Becky reached up, touched his face, and pulled him in. The kiss was slow and deep, a fire that burned away every cold thing the city had ever thrown at her. His hands trembled against her waist. Hers tangled in the fabric of his soaked shirt. When they finally broke apart, she whispered, "You're still dripping on my floor." He laughed, forehead resting against hers. "I'll buy you a new rug." She smirked. "Buy me a food truck instead." Done. Chapter 6: The Investor and the Street Queen. Becky didn't mean to fall in love, but it was hard not to when John showed up every morning now. Not in suits, but in hoodies, sleeves rolled up, helping her chop onions and prep sauces before sunrise. "You ever done real work before?" she teased one morning, watching him struggle to wrap a burrito without it imploding. "I've closed $400 million deals before breakfast," he muttered, eyes narrowed. "This is harder." Becky laughed. "Welcome to my world." Word spread fast. The billionaire was slumming it at Becky's bites. First it was whispers, then the press caught on. Then came the photographers, the gawkers, the influencers wanting a bite with Becky and John. And just like that, her little corner of peace turned into a circus. One night, as Becky cleaned up after closing, John sat silently on the bench across from her. His phone buzzed relentlessly. He didn't look at it. "I'm ruining this for you," he said. She froze. "You're not." "I am. You worked your whole life for this, and now it's all about me." Every blog, every interview. I didn't mean to cast a shadow over your light. Becky wiped her hands and sat beside him. Do you really think I care about clicks and headlines? You should, he said quietly, because this cart isn't just food. It's you. She stared at him for a moment. Then let's fix it. Together. He looked at her. How? We stop letting them define the story. He frowned. You want to go public? No, she said, smiling. I want to go real. You and me. On our terms. His eyes lit up. What does that mean? She stood. It means tomorrow we launch Becky's Bites 2.0 with a twist. John stood too, his business brain kicking into gear. You mean like a brand? No, she said, pulling him in close. I mean like a legacy. Chapter 7, The Fire in the Deal. The next morning, Becky and John rolled out the surprise. A second cart. Shiny. Upgraded. Wrapped in bold red paint with Becky's Bites 2.0 Real Food, Real Fire stenciled in white across the front. This one wasn't parked on the corner, it was stationed in front of Langston Tower itself. You're insane, Becky whispered as they approached, hand in hand. No, John said. I'm finally sane. And this is how I fix it. By noon, a line had formed. Executives in tailored suits stood beside construction workers and interns, all of them waiting. Not just for the food, but to see the billionaire behind the counter, smiling in an apron that said, Grill Boss. A camera crew from a business network arrived. A journalist tried to corner John for an interview. He turned her down flat. Becky took the mic instead. I started this cart with one burner and a dream, she said. I didn't know much about branding or buzzwords. I just knew what food could mean to people. John didn't change that. He reminded me that even in a world built on money, authenticity still matters. And love, it's the secret sauce. The crowd actually cheered. Later, as the sun dipped behind the towers and the carts began to close, John pulled Becky aside. You know what I realized today? That you're not terrible at flipping falafel, he chuckled. That too. But also, this is the first deal I've ever made that had nothing to do with profit and everything to do with purpose. She looked up at him, heart pounding. And what's the ROI on that? He smiled. Forever. Then, in front of the city, the crowd, and 100 flashing cameras, he kissed her. Not a PR kiss. Not a calculated moment. Just love. Raw, real, and earned. Chapter 8, The Backlash. By Monday, the headlines had changed. Billionaire's food cart fling, investors concerned. Is John Langston abandoning his empire for a snack queen? Love or liability? The backlash came fast. Stocks in Langston Holdings wobbled. Board members called emergency meetings. And Celine? She was waiting. In John's office. I warned you, she said, tapping her nails on a manila folder. You tied yourself to a woman with no pedigree, no boardroom savvy, just a pretty smile and a grill. She's more than that, John said, jaw tight. She may be, Celine replied. But this empire was built on image. If you won't protect it, others will. He glanced at the file on the desk. Inside, photos of Becky, with old boyfriends, with grease on her apron, laughing beside her broken-down cart. Personal, intimate, weaponized. They're digging, John, Celine said, softer now. They'll destroy her. And you. He didn't reply, just stared at the window, at the skyline he once ruled like a king. That night, Becky didn't open the cart. John found her on the rooftop of her apartment, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, city glowing beneath her like a sea of stars. They're coming after me, she said, voice steady. Because of you. No, he said, sinking down beside her. Because of us. She looked at him. So what do we do? He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. A drafted post glowed on the screen. Statement. I'm stepping down as CEO of Langston Holdings. Not because I failed them, but because I finally found something worth choosing. Love, purpose, something real. Becky blinked, stunned. You'd give all that up for me? No, he said, brushing her hair behind her ear. For us. Tears slipped down her cheeks. John, I've run empires, he whispered, but I've never lived until now. Chapter 9, The Fall and the Feast. The next few days were a blur of decisions. John went public. Not just with the post, but with everything. He called a press conference, not to spin the story or apologize for his choices, but to make a statement. I've spent my life building an empire, he said, standing before a sea of cameras. But I'm done. Done building walls between people. Done chasing numbers and deals that don't matter. I'm choosing something that's real. Celine stood at the back of the room, her face like stone, but in the crowd, Becky felt something shift. Something unsteady. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the tremor of disbelief. But John's decision was a gamble, and no one, not even he, knew how it would end. The next morning, Becky's Bites was flooded with customers, lines wrapped around the block, food critics and bloggers queued up alongside construction workers and business execs. John was there too. No longer just the billionaire. Now, he was the grill master, slinging lamb wraps and pouring sauce like he'd been born to do it. But just as quickly as the crowds appeared, so did the pressure. With every dollar that came in, so did an avalanche of opinions. Was it real? Was this a stunt? A publicity move? Or had Becky's food cart just become the next hot trend? The investors started circling. Offers came, and they came fast. John's phone rang off the hook with venture capitalists, private equity firms, and people who wanted to be a part of Becky's rise to fame. But Becky was standing firm, still slicing tomatoes and making tzatziki, refusing to let anyone co-opt what they had built. And then came the offer from Langston Holdings. "We'll buy you out," Celine had said, sitting across from Becky in a high-rise cafe. "We'll give you a new kitchen, a new team, a new location. You'll have the chance to scale this thing into a real business. No more cart, no more small time." Becky's fingers trembled as she sipped her coffee. She dreamed of expansion, of growth, of a future without the constant grind. But then she thought of John, at her side, no suit, no tie, just his hands in the dough, and the way he smiled when he served someone the perfect gyro. "You're missing the point," she said quietly. "I didn't start this for money. I started it because it mattered." Celine's lips twitched in something like a smile. "If you want to keep it small, then you'll have to leave everything else behind." Back at the cart, John found her sitting on the curb, the weight of the world on her shoulders. "They want to buy us," she said without looking up. "The whole thing." John crouched beside her. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not doing this to sell out." He smiled, a slow, steady smile that meant everything would be okay. "Then we don't sell. We grow our way. Together." Becky stared at him, her heart swelling. "You're sure about this? About us?" "No more fear," he said, taking her hand. "Only fire." They stood side by side facing the city, facing their future. Because love, like their food, needed to be served fresh, uncompromised. Chapter 10, A New Kind of Feast morning. The news John Langston, once the heir to a sprawling corporate empire, had officially stepped down as CEO of Langston Holdings. The reason? To work alongside Becky Monroe, owner of Becky's Bites, a humble food cart that had just gone global. But it wasn't the press conference or the headline-making announcement that mattered most. It was what happened after. John and Becky didn't sit behind desks in skyscrapers. They didn't take phone calls from investors in high-rise boardrooms. They didn't sign any checks. Instead, they rolled up their sleeves and created. Together, they worked on recipes. They opened their second food cart, but this time they launched it in 3 other cities: Chicago, Boston, and LA. They called it the Flame Trail, a mobile feast on wheels. The food was the same, yes. But the experience? That was something else entirely. Becky didn't just serve food. She served a connection. A moment when everything slowed down, when people remembered what it meant to eat something real. She and John would step out from behind the counter, join the crowd, chat with the regulars, share laughs. It wasn't about lines or profits. It was about community. And soon their story wasn't just one of business. It was a movement. But not everyone understood it. Celine made another appearance. This time it wasn't an offer. It was a warning. "You can't keep this up," she said, her tone colder than usual. "You'll burn out. You'll fail." Becky wiped her hands on her apron. "You've been wrong about me from the beginning." John stood beside her, strong and unshaken. "And you've been wrong about love." Celine looked between them, her lips curling into something dangerous. "This won't last. You'll both be forgotten. One day, all of this will just be a story." But John didn't blink. "Maybe. But it'll be our story. And I'm okay with that," Becky smiled. "You're right about one thing. We might burn out, but we'll go down together. And at least we'll have something real to show for it." Weeks turned into months, and Becky's Bites, both the cart and the brand, grew beyond anything they'd expected. They weren't just serving food, they were creating moments. And then came the biggest twist of all, a partnership. Not with Langston Holdings or any corporate giants, but with something even bigger: the people. They launched Flames of Midnight, an event, a celebration of food, love, and community. They invited anyone to share their stories, their journeys. They held food festivals in all their locations, with local musicians, artists, and chefs joining in. The food, of course, was free for the first hour. It wasn't about profit, it was about connecting with people. At the heart of it all were two things: Becky's food cart and John's unwavering belief in her. They hadn't built an empire. They'd built something better, a legacy. And as the sun set over the skyline one evening, with the glow of the city reflecting in their eyes, Becky and John sat side by side, watching their dream unfold. "Guess we didn't need to be anything we weren't after all," Becky said softly. "Nope," John agreed. "We just needed to be us." And for the first time in his life, John Langston knew exactly who he was.
Be sure to like and follow for more stories.